Well, good evening, brothers and sisters. We want to warmly welcome you to our midweek reading for tonight. And we have a wonderful program scheduled, very encouraging for all of us. And to get us started, we want to sing together in the song that's been selected, Song 125, and it's entitled, Happy Are the Merciful. And then Brother Mark Hammond will make the opening prayer. Again, it's song number 125. Again, we welcome you to our meeting for tonight. So what can we expect in this midweek reading program? Well, we'll begin by analyzing the quality of humility, and we'll use the example of Gideon, how he showed humility in his life, and also how we can imitate him in our current circumstances. Looking forward in our program, we're also going to see another video of organizational accomplishments. We always look forward to get a peek behind the scenes about how the work is carried out in headquarters. And tonight we'll see how newsroom reports are prepared. And finally, we'll also continue discussing the prophecy of Gog of Magog. Very exciting, one of the few prophecies yet to be fulfilled. And tonight we will be considering who is Gog of Magog and where will his attack take place. So we look forward to your comments, to your participation, and we know that it will be a source of encouragement for all of us tonight. So let's get started. To begin, for the treasures from God's Word, we'll ask Brother Nicholas Hanneman to consider the theme, Humility is Better Than Pride.
Every day, we may have to interact and deal with a variety of personalities, and this can often bring us much joy. But at times, though, it can also give rise to misunderstandings and differences. Really, what we say during those times can have a powerful effect. It can either add fuel or extinguish a situation. So what can help us just say the right thing? One quality that can help us is humility. Humility. It's been defined as freedom from pride, being lowly in mind. It comes from a Latin word meaning earth. So humility literally can mean being down to earth. In our Bible reading this week, we continue through our journey into the life of Judge Gideon. Let's consider two of his life experiences where he proved that humility is better than pride. Now, to set the stage for the first example, we have to first think back to our reading last week with Gideon and his 300 mighty men. But as the battle was winding down against the Midianites, Gideon then calls on other tribes for assistance to capture the fleeing soldiers. And in the end, the tribe of Ephraim was the one who was able to capture 2 princes of Midian. Now that the battle is over, can you just imagine what that scene may have looked like? A massive fighting army of men from the tribe of Ephraim, spears in their hands, fueled with adrenaline from their recent capture. They now approach Gideon. What would they tell him? But more importantly, how would Gideon react? Let's notice his reaction at Judges chapter 8 and verse 1. That's Judges chapter 8 and verse 1. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, "What have you done to us? Why didn't you call us when you went to fight against Midian?" And they quarreled bitterly with him. Now, if you were in that situation, what would have been your initial reaction to the men of Ephraim? Would you have blurted out an accurate but very insensitive statement? The end of verse 1 says that they quarreled bitterly. Now, whenever there's quarreling, we know that emotions, feelings, actions, and speech are all at a heightened state. How would Gideon respond? Let's continue in verses 2 and 3. It says, "But he said to them, 'What have I done compared with you? Are not the gleanings of Ephraim better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? It was into your hand that God gave Midian princes, Oreb and Zeeb. And what have I done compared with you?' When he spoke this way, they calmed down." What humility Gideon showed. Even though the tribe of Ephraim may have had a problem with self-importance and pride, Gideon didn't fire back with some sort of cutting remark. No, his well-chosen words promoted peace and extinguished a heated situation. Can you just picture in your mind what that scene may have looked like with all those heated members of the army just surrounding him? Can we just picture also too Gideon's just calm demeanor, a sense of peace as he delivered those words, a warm appeal in his eyes? In verses 2 and 3, Gideon, in essence, was highlighting the fact that what Ephraim did was far greater than what he did himself. In fact, he contrasted gleanings with a grape harvest. And he even reminded them that they also had Jehovah's help in their successful capture. He really avoided a disastrous intertribal war. What was the result? Well, the end of verse 3, it says, when he spoke this way, they calmed down. You know, that reminds me of a Bible proverb which states, where there is no wood, the fire goes out. Well, what's our takeaway? Well, at times when we deal with others, whether it's in the family, in the congregation, in our assignment, at work, or at school, differences and misunderstandings may come up. If we notice a picture on screen, those differences can occur even in our ministry. When those situations do come up, though, what do we need to do? Remember Gideon. Remember, humility helped Gideon promote peace. Thank you, brothers. Let's consider the second example where Gideon proved that humility is better than pride. In the remaining verses of Judges chapter 8, it tells us how Gideon completes the victory by capturing 2 kings, as well as the remaining soldiers of Gideon. Can you just think about the feeling that must have occurred throughout the land? No doubt, having such a victorious warrior in their midst, a natural progression of rank probably ensued. How would Gideon have responded to a flattering request, one going from warrior to king? How would you have responded? Would Gideon let pride get the best of him? Let's continue reading in chapter 8, verse 23. But Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. Jehovah is the one who will rule over you. Again, what humility Gideon showed. Rather than let pride inflate his feeling of self-worth, Gideon was lowly in mind and allowed humility to keep him grounded. What's our takeaway? Well, whenever we are on the receiving end of flattering praise, remember Gideon. He didn't allow a natural progression to get the best of him. Humility caused him to know his role and seek Jehovah's glory rather than his own. You know, it's been said that with humility, that's when we realize that we are a mere flickering glow of a candle, and God is brighter than the blaze of sun at noonday. Now, a contrasting bad, prideful example was set by one of Gideon's sons, Abimelech. Now, after Gideon's death, Israel wanted to have a king. And in a prophetic illustration of trees searching for a king, we notice one particular unique situation. Please turn with me to Judges chapter 9 and verse 15. That's Judges chapter 9 and verse 15. It says, at this, the bramble said to the trees, if you really are anointing me as king over you, come and seek refuge under my shadow. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble and consume the cedars of Lebanon. Yes, this bramble very pridefully accepted this request to be king. And this bramble represented none other than proud Abimelech. The suggestion that other trees could seek refuge in the shadow of this bramble was no doubt ironic, really attesting to Abimelech's prideful nature, since we know bramble or low bushes cannot provide shade for the other trees, such as cedars. You know, we can think of it, it's as if this bramble or Abimelech was saying, please, come, bask in the shade of my humility. Abimelech's pride was so bad that it moved him to use his mother's influential family as leverage for his own desire. And pride even drove him to kill 70 of his half-brothers, ensuring that he was made king. But just after 3 years, his reign was crushed and put to an end. Well, what's our takeaway? Well, from Abimelech, we can see how devastating pride can be. It can make us think that we are just capable of doing things that we really aren't. It can cause us to misuse our authority, and it can make us even hurt the ones whom we love. What valuable lessons we learned from Gideon and Abimelech. Gideon showed us that humility can help us promote peace and extinguish a heated situation. It moves us to always seek Jehovah's glory and prevents us from letting the natural progression cloud our own estimation of ourselves. And finally, pride has bad consequences, as Abimelech has shown us, and it can result in bringing harm upon others and even ourselves. Yes, humility is better than pride.
Thank you very much, Brother Hanneman. Excellent application. Thank you for highlighting this good example. And now we'll continue with the spiritual gems, and everyone will have an opportunity to share their comments and the gems that they found this week. And to lead that discussion, we turn our attention to Brother Clay Ackerman.
To get us started, could we have a reader for Judges 8, verse 27, please? Could we have Sister Husino, please?
Gideon made it into an ephod and exhibited it in his city Ophrah, and all Israel committed spiritual prostitution with it there, and it served as a snare to Gideon and to his household.
Thank you. So the question, did Gideon worship the ephod that he made? Brother Hammond, please.
Well, the scriptures do not specifically tell us that he worshiped the ephod, but we do know that Paul listed him in Hebrews chapter 11, and also there in reference in first verse of chapter 12, that he was among the group of faithful witnesses for Jehovah. So he wouldn't have been listed by Jehovah as someone faithful if he had personally worshiped the ephod.
That's very nice, thank you. Sister Akon?
And in the references, we see that his motive for making this ephod was actually being used to commemorate Jehovah's hand in a victory and to honor Jehovah, but it ended up being turned into this gross misuse by Israel, leading them to worship that instead of Jehovah.
Yes, thank you. We'll go on to our second question. What spiritual gems from this week's Bible reading would you like to share regarding Jehovah, the field ministry, or something else? Could we have Brother Rodriguez, please?
In chapter 8, when asked to be king, Gideon modestly directed his attention to Jehovah. So if someone asks me what they should do on a personal matter or a conscience matter, instead of just giving them the answer, I want to imitate Gideon and help them see how Jehovah can help them to make the decision.
Yes, thank you. Could we have Sister Hanneman?
Jotham was encouraging to me. At Judges 9, 8 through 15 and 17, we see that this prophecy from the trees, it was directed toward his older half-brother. So it reminded me that even our young ones can take a stand for what is right in the family, and the good example set by his father didn't go unnoticed.
Yes, thank you. Could we have Brother Torres, please?
So as I was reading Judges 8, that first verse, the example of Ephraim, it really brings home the importance of stepping back when we get upset, we feel we've been treated unfairly, and try to look at matters from a different perspective. If these friends from Ephraim had thought about it from the other perspective, they probably would have realized there was no reason to be upset. And if we do that, a lot of times we find there is no reason to be angry, and we can save problems, and we can retain the peace within the congregation.
Yes, thank you. Have Sister Rodriguez, please.
In 8, 5, and 6, Gideon asked the men of Succoth for food to give to his men. It made me think, how would I react if I was asked to do some extra work at the Kingdom Hall or got an extra congregation assignment that I wasn't expecting? Unlike the men from Succoth, I want to have the attitude, this is for Jehovah. Jehovah's representative is asking this of me.
Thank you. Brother Gutierrez, please.
Yes, Judges chapter 8, verses 2 and 3 teach us to be empathetic and humble. Here we can see that if we have a disagreement with someone, we must always try to see things from their perspective. Or we could even go a step further to calm things down and congratulate them for something that they have done well. However, for this, humility is needed, especially when it's evident that the other person is wrong. But in the end, we learn that maintaining the peace is much more important than proving somebody wrong.
Nice, thank you. We have Brother Justino, please.
Yeah, in Judges 8:32 said that Gideon had a good old age, especially because he had Jehovah's favor. In the same way we have in our congregations, our dearest older brothers and sisters that normally are the first one connecting to our Zoom meetings, are the first one also in the preaching work, doing calls and writing letters. And we enjoy the excellent comments, and they are a good example for us. We know for sure that they have a good old age because Jehovah values them.
Very nice, thank you. Sister Cloud, please.
At Judges 8:34, we see that Israelites did not remember Jehovah and all that he had done to rescue them. And because we are human, we too could forget Jehovah. But something that we can do to combat that is to look for the ways that Jehovah blesses us and thank him in our prayers for those blessings. And if we do this daily, it helps us to draw close to Jehovah. And by doing this, we will not forget him.
Thank you. We have Sister Hemon, please.
8:6 also struck me because of it seemed to be food as a theme in this whole account. You know, there was no food in the land because of the way they've been oppressed, beating the wheat out in the wine press. He was generous with his goat as a sacrifice. Even the illustrations that were given was a barley loaf rolling. So here's a time of where people really have this need on their heart. And yet, even though they would have heard what Jehovah was doing, these men had traveled 50 miles already, had been fighting a couple of days, and no one was willing to support them. And so I too was wondering if my trust in Jehovah is the sort that I would put aside my needs for his work.
Very good, thank you. We have either Brother or Sister Hoy, please.
I appreciated Judges chapter 8, verse 4, because it helps us to appreciate the feelings that Gideon and the 300 men had. They were tired, but they kept up the pursuit. Gideon's feat was more than a few minutes of blowing horns, waving torches, and shouting. It actually encompassed about 50 miles. And it's interesting how in Hebrews chapter 11, how Gideon is mentioned among the men of faith, and there wasn't enough time to relate his works and how from a weak state, he was made powerful. He became valiant and more. So for us as Christians today, we can look and see with our busy service to Jehovah, we may be tired, but it's very, very important. It's vital that we keep up in our pursuit of doing what's right and doing Jehovah's will.
Nice, thank you. We have Sister Jusino, please.
In Judges chapter 8, verses 1 till 3, we can see that Gideon's modesty teaches us important lessons. One of them is that when a privilege of service is extended to us, we should meditate on the responsibility that comes with it instead of think on the prominence or prestige that may be associated with the new assignment.
Yes, thank you. Brother Hoy, please.
I also appreciated Judges chapter 8, verse 10, because at first Gideon and his army of just 300 were outnumbered, 135,000 to 300. That was 1 to 450 people. But due to their persistence and their reliance on Jehovah, the ratio dropped to 1 to 50. Now they're in pursuit of 15,000. So a lesson here for me is in my spiritual warfare, we too will see positive results if we rely on our God Jehovah and we persist in our ministry.
Nice, thank you. And Sister Ackerland.
I also appreciated Jotham's example in Judges 9, when he knew the time to hide from his brother, but then he knew the time to stand up to him. So we see that Jehovah definitely must have helped him to make these wise choices, and he'll definitely do the same for us when we face situations where we must decide when to hide, keep quiet, or speak up.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your research and encouraging comments, and we'll turn it back over to the chairman.
Excellent comments. Thank you both, Brother Heckerland, and to all who participated. It really was so many good lessons that we find in these just 2 chapters. So now let's turn our attention to a portion of the Bible reading for this week. And the reading is Judges chapter 8, verse 28, up to chapter 9, verse number 6. And Alejandro Gutierrez will do that reading for us.
Thus Midian was subdued before the Israelites, and they did not challenge them again. And the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. So Jerubbaal, the son of Joash, returned to his home and stayed there. Gideon became father to 70 sons, for he had many wives. His concubine Shechem also bore him a son, and he named him Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died at a good old age and was buried in the tomb of Joash, his father in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. As soon as Gideon died, the Israelites again committed spiritual prostitution with the Baals, and they appointed Baal-berith as their god. The Israelites did not remember Jehovah their God, who had rescued them from the hand of all their enemies around them, nor did they show loyal love toward the household of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done for Israel. In time, Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to his mother's brothers in Shechem, and he said to them and to all the family of his grandfather, "Please, ask the leaders of Shechem, which is better for you, for all 70 sons of Jerubbaal to rule over you, or for one man to rule over you? And remember that I am your own bone and flesh." So his mother's brothers said this in his behalf to all the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts were inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our own brother." Then they gave him 70 pieces of silver from the house of Baal-berith, and Abimelech used it to hire idle and insolent men to accompany him. After that, he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. The only survivor was Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, because he hid. Then all the leaders of Shechem and all Beth Millo gathered together and made Abimelech king, close by the big tree, by the pillar that was in Shechem.
Brother Gutierrez, thank you very much. That was a very good reading. You were working on accurate reading, and indeed, it was an accurate reading. And you weren't just reading individual words correctly. We noticed that you were reading in a fluid way. You were grouping words. You understood what was the purpose behind what you were reading. And that's what we're looking for. What we want to avoid is when we make mistakes in the way we pronounce words, if we skip words, because that'll throw our audience off. They'll lose track of the message and still focus on our mistake. So really good work. And I just want to highlight one particular thing that I noticed you did well is holding your head high to make sure that your voice would carry, and opening your mouth wide so that we could clearly hear what you were saying. Very good work. Thank you very much. And now we'll move over to apply yourself to the field ministry. And we have several examples of return visits and how we can do a Bible study. So first off, we'll focus on the return visit. We'll listen now to Sisters Juliana Hanneman and Minsun Rodriguez.
Hi, Minsum. I'm reaching out to you just as I promised.
Oh, yes, you kept your word. Thank you.
Well, I really enjoyed our conversation last time, and I've been thinking a lot about it. You shared some sad experiences you faced recently. If you can, could you pull up that brochure I texted you last time? I think you will find it to be encouraging.
Okay, I have it.
Oh, great. Please note the second point of the lesson number 22. It asks a question. What kind of future does the Bible describe? Would you mind reading that paragraph, please? Thank you. Now the paragraph says to read Revelation 21:4. If you tap on that, the verse will come up. When it does, would you mind reading that, please?
Sure. And he will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will no mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be anymore. The former things have passed away.
Oh, thank you. It's a pretty reading. Now, was there anything in this verse that stood out to you that you would like God to do?
Well, no more death stood out to me.
Yeah. Losing a loved one in death is really a heartbreaking experience, and it does impact us. Now, in connection with this verse, I would like to actually text you a picture. Please let me know when you get it.
Yes, I got it.
Great. Now, looking at that picture, can you imagine yourself living in a world with no more death and that becoming a reality along with all these other things on the picture?
I have to be honest, it really seems too good to be true.
Well, you are not alone for saying that. And right now we don't see those things happening. But that verse we read is a promise from God. Now, with any promise, to make it reassuring and believable, wouldn't you agree that the one making the promise should have a proven track record of keeping his promise?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's just like when we receive a warranty or a written agreement for something we purchase. That warranty assures us of the coverage a company will provide for their product. So in the same way, those words in Revelation 21:4 are a written guarantee from God, our Creator, reassuring us that He will restore our loved ones, your loved ones, back to life. Tell you what, next time we talk, we'll see how we can build trust in the promises God gives us. I assure you, you will not be disappointed.
I would like that very much.
Great. Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to talk.
Thank you very much, sisters. That was a really good example of a clear and simple return visit. And as you probably imagine, the sisters were working on appropriate use of visual aids. And absolutely, that was the perfect illustration to bring home the point of the scripture that had been read. And that's what we want to do, focus on illustrations that make the important points that we want to stand out. And it's nice that you made that point during the presentation. You made sure that your householder had received the image, had it visible, because we do want to prepare to make sure that they benefit from it. Now with the pandemic, we have to use different techniques to make sure that the image is visible to others. And thank you for using the good illustrations, the good examples. The warranty, we'll have to remember that. All right, so now let's have another return visit, but in this case, the publisher will also start the Bible study. So let's turn our attention to brothers Otto Mendoza and Gabriel Estrada.
Well, how you doing, Gabe?
Doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Excellent. So last time we spoke, we went over some of the promises that we found in the Bible that give us hope.
Yeah, I remember that. And I actually have the magazine that you left me pulled up here.
Excellent, excellent. So why don't we take a look at it together, and maybe we can finish looking at some of those promises.
Sure, that sounds good.
Okay. So some of the ones that we looked at have a lot to do with better living conditions, how we're all going to have homes, we'll have peace, food, how all of our basic needs will be met.
Yeah, I remember that. Everything that we went over sounded super nice. But one thing that I had a question about was the part of the paragraph that said that God will swallow up death forever and death will be no more.
Oh, okay. Well, why don't we read the scripture cited in the paragraph to better understand it? Yeah? Revelations 21:4, and if you don't mind reading that for us, please.
Sure. It says, and he will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away.
Thank you. Yeah. So how do you understand this promise?
Well, I guess it said that death will be no more. So if that's the case, what does that mean for those who have already died?
Well, that's a good question. There in the paragraph, actually, the last sentence clarifies that. It says how God will give all humans, both those whom he saves when he destroys the world and the countless dead ones, he will resurrect in the coming new world, the opportunity to live forever. So those that are living will continue living forever, and those that died will be resurrected and have the chance to live forever.
Okay. So I see that we're promised those things, but how is living forever going to be any better if things that we're seeing now don't change?
Well, I'll tell you what, let me send you a link to a brochure that will help us find the answer to that question. Let me know when you get it.
Okay. Oh, just got it.
Excellent. So if you open it to lesson 2, down in the second question, it reads, what kind of future does the Bible describe? Do you mind reading the paragraph, please?
Sure. and says the Bible describes a future time when death will be no more, neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The problems that can make life seem hopeless today, such as poverty, injustice, sickness, and death, will no longer exist. The Bible promises that humans will be able to enjoy life forever in paradise on earth.
Yeah, exactly. So as we see in that paragraph, the problems that make life seem hopeless today will be done away with. They won't exist anymore. And did you notice what those problems were?
Yeah, it said poverty, injustice, sickness, and death.
Yeah, exactly. So when God does away with this wicked system of things, not only is he going to do away with everyone, but also everything that contributes to these problems. In this case, death that will cease to exist. And as a result, not only are we going to enjoy better living conditions, but we'll also enjoy life forever in a new perfect world.
Oh, that makes sense. And that actually sounds really nice. But what does this mean for me now? How does this help us now?
Well, tell you what, the next subheading actually tackles this question: how knowing and trusting in these promises help and benefit us today. Why don't we take a look at that next week or next time we get together, and we can look at it a little deeper. What do you think about that?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you very much, brothers. Again, another good example of a return visit, now taking the next step, just getting that Bible study started. And the sound counsel point was on effective conclusion. And when we talk about conclusions, they are very important out of many reasons, because the last thing we say is the thing that stays in the mind of our householder. So we want to make sure we make it count. Now, in this case, what was the point? Well, we want our Bible student to continue to consider. And that was how Brother Mendoza concluded, encouraging to be present the next week so they could answer the question. And he showed him a preview of where the answer to his question would be found. So thank you for that good example of a clear and simple conclusion that we can also imitate in our ministry. And now we'll move on to the Bible study. We're continuing to work our way through the Enjoy Life Forever brochure. And in particular, we'll be taking a look at the second lesson, the point number 4. So let's notice how Sisters Hoy and Ackerland developed the theme.
Bridget, would you please read Isaiah chapter 65, verse 17? This verse highlights how no one will be plagued by troubling thoughts or memories.
Sure. It says, "For look, I am creating new heavens and a new earth, and the former things will not be called to mind, nor will they come up into the heart."
Thank you. So the asterisk after the word mind indicates a footnote. And what does it say?
It says, "or be remembered."
Okay. So looking back at the verse, let's reread the sentence. And the former things will not be called to mind or be remembered. Can you imagine what that will be like? How do you feel about this promise?
I think it's great. You know, we all have things we'd want to forget, and it would definitely take some weight off of my shoulders.
I can assure you, you're not the only one. What a wonderful time that will be. Now, our final scripture in Psalms chapter 37, verse 29, shows how everyone will live forever in ideal conditions. And I will read that, Isaiah 37, 29. And that says, "The righteous will possess the earth, and they will live forever on it." So who will live forever?
It says the righteous.
And who does God consider to be righteous?
Well, I would think it's the good people.
True. These are ones who exercise faith in God, and they back up that faith by works in harmony with God's righteous standards. Now, where will they live?
On the earth?
Yes. Yes, some have said that they don't want to live forever on earth because of the way that life is like now. The scriptures that we read in the left column, shaded in blue, correspond to the blue pictures above. What do you see?
Well, I see a young boy in the hospital, very sick, an old man walking with a walker, children look like they're starving in poverty, and then a young woman curled up in a ball. I mean, she must have gone through some trauma or suffering from depression. Definitely a sad situation, all of these.
Yes. Even if we aren't personally affected by all of these problems, we or everyone has experienced or is experiencing something. And that's the sad reality of life. Now, remember that these scriptures in blue, along with the pictures, actually show what no one will experience in the future. Now let's look on the bright side. When we look at the right-hand column that's shaded in yellow, it corresponds to the full color pictures above. Keeping in mind, again, what we read, these are conditions that everyone looks forward to enjoying. Is there anything that stands out to you?
No. They all look amazing, but I don't know, just the little boy embracing his mom again, all healthy, and maybe he's resurrected in the future. That just seems amazing. We all have family who've lost in death, or it's just terrible to see a child suffer. So just to see that go away, that'll be wonderful.
Yes, this is definitely a comparison of life now with life in the future, according to the Bible's promises. Rather than experiencing sickness and death, as you brought out, you, me, and our families will be alive and in good health. Rather than experiencing old age, we'll be young and full of energy, which is something we all want. Rather than children starving to death or being forced to work, they'll have plenty to eat, and they'll truly get to enjoy being children. And rather than suffering from painful memories or thoughts as a result of life's ongoing experiences, we'll be at peace and truly happy. Now, after examining all of this, do you feel that these scriptures give hope?
They do for me. Yeah.
Could they give hope to your friends and your family?
Oh, definitely.
We've just considered 16 verses in the Bible that have taught us a lot in answer to the question from paragraph 1, will life ever get better? They've painted a bright picture for the future. Can you see yourself there?
Well, yeah, that would be amazing.
It definitely will be. Bridget, I want to commend you for looking at these scriptures and reading them ahead of time in preparation for the Bible study.
Oh, thank you. I was actually really surprised when I read them. I never knew that the Bible explains the things that it does.
And it explains a whole lot more. Next week, we're going to find out how the Bible's hope can make a difference in our lives now. We'll watch a video. We'll also consider point number 5 along with the summary and the review.
Okay, that sounds good. Now I'll try to look ahead of time over it and everything.
That would be great. I'll go on ahead and say a closing prayer.
Again, we appreciate your excellent preparation, sisters. There was a lot of material to cover, and the scriptures that were selected were very appropriate. And in particular, the study point that was assigned was practical value made clear. And to make this work, it requires a lot of effort beforehand. As we see in the council point, it requires that we consider what aspect of the topic will be particularly helpful for our Bible student. And we noticed that as the sisters were focusing on the illustrations, which were the points that really made a difference for that householder. The hope of the resurrection, of being reunited with family members that had already passed away. And that really made it not just a nice thing or a wonderful idea, but something to look forward to, something that personally affected her. So thank you for showing us how we can apply this council point. So again, we have a lot of good information we can apply in our ministry for this weekend or during the rest of the week. But now let's focus on the next assignment within our meeting. Now we'll move on to living as Christians. And to get us started, we'll have again an opportunity to sing together, and we'll be singing Song 108, entitled God's Loyal Love. As we mentioned earlier, we have a special treat tonight. We'll be able to see another video in the series Organizational Accomplishments. So let's pay attention to the video.
We have heard from many of you how much you've really appreciated JW News as a source of accurate information. In contrast with much of the misinformation posted on the internet and social media, Jehovah's people serve as a pillar and support of the truth, as 1 Timothy 3:15 says. But just what does it take to prepare a newsroom report? Well, under the direction of the Coordinators Committee of the governing body, the Office of Public Information, or OPI, prepares articles for the JW Newsroom. Now, they work closely with Public Information Desk, or PIDs, in our branch offices. In the following report, some of these brothers share a behind-the-scenes look at how articles in the last few years have been written and published on JW News.
From the late 1960s to the late 1990s, Italian brothers were condemned and imprisoned for refusing military service. A recent survey revealed that more than 14,000 brothers from that group are still alive. They were sentenced to a total of almost 10,000 years in prison. We thought that their experiences could make a potential story for the newsroom section of JW.org, along with comments from secular sources. So we promptly notified OPI.
When we received that proposal, we agreed with their assessment. That's when we go into action. We'll talk about the angle back and forth with the PID until we have something that we know will work not only for Italy, but for our worldwide audience on JW.org.
Then we interviewed some brothers who had been in prison the longest. They had to face many challenges, but they also recalled how their loyalty was a great witness, especially for some prison guards who eventually became Jehovah's Witnesses as well. This additional information was confirmed and then added to the story. Then we sent the draft to OPI.
Once the initial article is written by the branch, there's still quite a bit of work that has to be done. We'll edit the article, select the photos, write the captions, send it through proofreading, and then lastly, the article then is sent back to the Coordinators Committee for their final review and approval. Shortly after the article was posted on JW.org and the Italy PID informed their local reporters, over 50 media outlets in Italy covered this story and wrote articles about this topic. Well, our hope was that by publicizing this information, it would not only be encouraging to our brothers and sisters, but it would have a positive impact on fair-minded officials in other countries where our brothers are still dealing with this issue of neutrality.
2019 was the 25th anniversary of the genocide in Rwanda. So because of that, there was greater interest in the scholarly community in particular about what happened during the genocide. One of the things that OPI was responsible for doing is to collect experiences of people who were our brothers and sisters, who saw the violence and who survived, and help others to survive, sometimes at the risk of their own lives.
Our office assisted OPI in preparing the article in two ways. First of all, ensuring that the release was accurate. Secondly, to ensure that the article gave consideration to the perspective of those who went through genocide.
And many of the brothers have been able to read that story on JW News, and it's encouraged them when they see the courage and the faith that our brothers displayed in Rwanda.
OPI has the privilege of assisting the brothers in Russia. We prepare news items on JW News. Once a trial begins, the team works together to prepare a JW News item. We have to do lots of research on the brother or the sister's personal case history, where they raided, where they put in pretrial detention. We can introduce the brother, the sister to the brotherhood, and then they can pray for them. Once we put together the material, we send it to the Public Information Desk. And then on the day of the verdict, we post a breaking news to immediately alert the brotherhood.
How can you make the best use of JW News? Look for opportunities to share news items with your Bible students and others. Many of these reports show how Jehovah's people demonstrate love for one another. Another way is by praying for our brothers and sisters that we read about in the newsroom. We hope you continue to use the newsroom to stay informed, to be encouraged, and to remain united with God's organization, a pillar and support of the truth.
No doubt, our appreciation for this feature is now increased when we understand everything that happens behind the scenes in order to publish these news reports for our benefits and for the Worldwide Brotherhood. So now we want to focus our attention on the local needs that's been prepared for this night. It's a 10-minute talk, which is entitled Prepare Now for Persecution. Let's pay close attention to Brother Andre Cloud.
If you've ever been on a long road trip and gotten a flat tire, you know the importance of thoroughly preparing before you take a vehicle out on the road. You either found an adequately inflated spare tire in the trunk or a flat spare tire in the trunk. Preparing ensures that we have what we need for the expected and even the unexpected things that may happen. In our understanding of where we are in the stream of time, we know Jesus prophesied of a day that will test the preparedness of every true Christian, the Great Tribulation. Now, we don't know all of the specifics of what that time period will entail, but we know that we can expect persecution leading up to and during the tribulation. The good news is we know ahead of time that it's coming. The big question is, will we take the time right now to prepare for what may come? Now, that doesn't mean trying to anticipate every possible scenario that may happen in the events leading up to and during the Great Tribulation. No, we can't prepare for that like we'd prepare for a road trip. In truth, there is little we can do in the way of physical preparation. However, we must right now make sure that we're strong mentally, emotionally, and most importantly, spiritually. So we're going to look at two things. The first is, what should our perspective or mindset on persecution be? And second, what are 4 traps we must avoid if we're going to be prepared for future challenges? So let's address the first. What should our mindset on persecution be? Does being persecuted mean that we've lost God's favor? Well, notice Jesus' prophecy at John 15 and verse 20 that will help us answer this question. It says, "Keep in mind the word I said to you, a slave is not greater than his master. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have observed my word, they will also observe yours." So Jesus said that if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, meaning following in his steps as true Christians, that we should expect persecution. But does that mean we've lost God's favor? Well, in 2 Corinthians 11, verses 23 through 27, we see the example of the Apostle Paul, a man that we know had God's approval, but suffered through a laundry list of persecution for his faith. But he endured successfully. So in reality, if we're being persecuted, it means we're doing what's right and we have the support of our God, Jehovah. And this should actually motivate us to keep our faith and integrity. Well, how can we do that? Well, we get to our second point. What are those 4 traps we must avoid if we're going to be prepared for future challenges? The first is to be cautious when sharing information. This is based on the principle found in Ecclesiastes 3 and verse 7, where it tells us there's a time for everything, including a time to keep quiet. And during persecution or ban, it is definitely a time to keep quiet. But even before then, we should ask ourselves, am I known as being a reliable and trustworthy person right now when it comes to assignments and keeping confidential things confidential? This is especially true for appointed men in the congregation. Psalm 39 verse 1 tells us, "I will guard my step to avoid sinning with my tongue. I will guard my mouth with a muzzle as long as anyone wicked is in my presence." What does this teach us? Under bans and persecution, sensitive information must be safeguarded, such as the names of our brothers and sisters, locations of meetings, how we receive spiritual food, and the like. During these times, secular authorities simply do not have the right to information about our spiritual family. Second trap, don't allow minor issues to divide us. Satan's own house is divided, so he's constantly trying to drive wedges between us, so we'll fight each other instead of him. And even experienced Christians can fall into this trap. But we can ask ourselves, how do I get along with my brothers and sisters right now? Can I really say I'd sacrifice my life for my brother or sister if I can't even work with them in the same car group or Zoom breakout room? Good principles to keep in mind that will help us overcome differences with our brothers and avoid the trap of disunity is found in Colossians chapter 3 and verses 13 and 14. There it reads, "Continue putting up with one another and forgiving one another freely, even if anyone has a cause for complaint against another. Just as Jehovah freely forgave you, you must also do the same. But besides all these things, clothe yourselves with love, for it is a perfect bond of union." Verse 13 encourages us to continue putting up with one another. And that phrase carries a meaning of putting up with not serious sins our brother may commit against us, but putting up with the traits or characteristics of our brother that may annoy or irritate us, but that we're also to freely forgive them. And verse 14 tells us how we can do that, by clothing ourselves, literally enveloping ourselves with love, not allowing anything to sneak in and drive a wedge between us and our spiritual family. The third trap, avoid being presumptuous. Satan wants us to assume that we know better than trusted, responsible brothers. So we have to ask ourselves, do I trust the elders and responsible brothers right now? If we're not 100% sure to the answer to that question, then Hebrews 13 verses 7 and 17 can help us. Hebrews 13:7 says, "Remember those who are taking the lead among you, who have spoken the word of God to you, and as you contemplate how their conduct turns out, imitate their faith." And verse 17, "Be obedient to those who are taking the lead among you and be submissive, for they are keeping watch over you as those who will render an account, so that they may do this with joy and not with sighing, for this would be damaging to you." Following the direction from brothers Jehovah has appointed to take the lead among us will always lead to blessings. And meditating on verses like this can help us bridge that gap between obedience and submission, to where even if we don't understand the direction, we're still obedient to it and submit to the instructions. It could mean our lives. Trap number 4, don't make unnecessary rules. As imperfect humans, we have a tendency to impose unnecessary conditions on ourselves. Again, some questions for self-examination. What is my attitude towards the field ministry now? Do I show fear of man even now when there may be little to no persecution where I live? Notice this interesting thought at Leviticus 26, verses 36 and 37 that can help us. It says, "As for those who survive, I will fill their hearts with despair in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a blowing leaf will cause them to flee, and they will flee like someone running from the sword and fall without anyone pursuing them. They will stumble over one another like those running from a sword, though no one is pursuing them. You will not be able to resist your enemies." See, in some cases, under persecution or ban, we could ban ourselves, meaning even though there may be some restrictions to our work or activity, we decide that we can't do anything. And in these cases, it's because even before the persecution began, we were struggling with the weakness, the fear of men. But there's another part of this trap that needs to be avoided. In some areas where the activities of Jehovah's Witnesses have been banned, some elders, thinking that they were acting in the interest of the friend's safety, made actual lists of do's and don'ts. However, if as appointed men we were to make unnecessary rules, this would, instead of making things safer for the brothers, actually create more of a burden on them. As 2 Corinthians 1:24 states, we are not the masters of our brother or sister's faith. So, how can we make sure that we're prepared for persecution? Be cautious about sharing information. 2, don't allow minor issues to divide us. 3, avoid being presumptuous. And 4, don't make unnecessary rules. So, are you prepared? We don't know when that road trip is going to begin or specifically what we'll come across along the way, but we know the final destination. But don't wait until you have a flat tire to check the spare. Similarly, we don't know when the Great Tribulation is going to begin or what specific persecutions we'll personally face, but we know where it's going to end. Life in a perfect, peaceful new world. But to get there, we must prepare now for future persecution. Make sure that our hearts and minds are strong, confident that with Jehovah's help, not under our own strength, and with trust in his organization, no weapon formed against us will succeed. We'll now turn our attention back to our chairman.
Thank you very much, Brother Cloud. It was very encouraging, very practical to focus on what we can do, and at the same time, have clear how Jehovah will help us where the need comes up. Certainly, it is very helpful to have these reminders now before the problem starts. But at the same time, it gets us thinking about what will happen in the future, about persecution that will come. And Ezekiel prophesied about a future persecution. And right now, we are considering one of those important prophecies. So let's turn our attention to Brother Brent Hoy as he considers our congregation Bible study.
Well, this week, we're going to continue in lesson in chapter 17, entitled, I Am Against You, O Gog. We know it's a thrilling account because it portrays what's soon to take place during the Great Tribulation, but also it's sobering because we know Gog is one who will attack Jehovah's people. In fact, last week I started to identify just who Gog was. And we know, as in paragraph 4 of this lesson, it was mentioned that he is a visible human enemy of Jehovah and his worshipers. Thus, it also eliminated Satan the devil as a possibility because it gave evidence to show that it wasn't a spiritual being that it was referring to, or spiritual creature. We've also considered one line of evidence that associates Gog with the king of the north. And this week, we're going to pick up with that evidence and clearly give concrete identification just to who Gog is. And we're also going to identify the land that Gog invades and see what meaning it has for you and I. So we look forward to our lesson. To get us started, we have Brother Pablo Rodriguez to do our reading. And before he reads paragraph 9, we're going to ask him to read the read scriptures that begin that paragraph and then follow with the reading of paragraph 9.
Revelation chapter 16, verse 14. They are, in fact, expressions inspired by demons, and they perform signs, and they go out to the kings of the entire inhabited earth to gather them together to the war of the great day of God the Almighty. Chapter 16, verse 16. And they gathered them together to the place that is called in Hebrew Armageddon. Chapter 17, verse 14. These will battle with the Lamb, but because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, the Lamb will conquer them. Also, those with him who are called and chosen and faithful will do so. Chapter 19, verse 19 and 20. And I saw the wild beasts and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to wage war against the one seated on the horse and against his army. And the wild beast was caught, and along with it the false prophet that performed in front of it the signs with which he misled those who received the mark of the wild beast and those who worship its image. While still alive, they both were hurled into the fiery lake that burns with sulfur. The kings of the entire inhabited earth. The book of Revelation foretold an attack by the kings of the earth on the King of Kings, the heavenly Jesus. But unable to reach into the heavens, the rebels attacked the earthly supporters of the kingdom. The kings of the earth then find themselves on the losing side in the battle at Armageddon. Notice that they come to their end after attacking Jehovah's people. This is similar to what is said about Gog of Magog.
Very nice. Thank you, Brother Rodriguez. Our question here for paragraph 9. What similarity is there between what happens to Gog of Magog and what happens to the kings of the entire inhabited earth? Let's have Brother Hammond, please.
Both are described as coming to their complete end and their complete destruction, and the method of execution is even described in similar terms.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very nice. Thank you. Brother Cloud, please.
And interestingly, both the nations of the earth and Gog of Magog both come to the end after attacking Jehovah's people. So interesting similarity there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Brother Rodriguez?
This paragraph was very encouraging to me. It made me think if we've ever been watching a sporting event and we get a little nervous because our team, we don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to win? But if we knew the final score and we knew our team was going to come out on top, we wouldn't have to be nervous or anxious anymore. Well, this is what Jehovah's telling us here. He's telling us the final score and how his people are going to be victorious.
Excellent. Very nice. Thank you for illustrating that. Very nice. And how does a footnote, what does a footnote add to this paragraph? Let's have Sister Ackerland, please.
Well, the footnote mentions that there's actually 4 attacks foretold upon coming upon God's people, and these 4 may actually refer to the same attack, just under different names.
Yeah, interesting, huh? Yeah, it almost compares Gog of Magog to like a criminal with different aliases. See, and so far we've identified a few of those aliases that he's associated with. Maybe just to review, what were those? Who are those that we've compared so far Gog of Magog to? What are those 3 aliases? One of them, perhaps. Sister Hammond, please.
The king of the north.
Yes, very good. Further on that, Sister Cloud, please.
The kings of the earth.
Nice. And Sister Hoy.
The Assyrian.
Yes, the modern day Assyrian. So in comparisons, we are getting a clear picture of just who Gog of Magog is. And let's get a concrete identity by reading paragraph 10.
In view of the foregoing, what may we conclude about the identity of Gog? First, Gog is not a spirit creature. Second, Gog refers to earthly nations that will attack God's people in the near future. Those nations will undoubtedly form a coalition. That is, they will band together somehow. Why? Since God's people are found earth-wide, the nations will need to be united in purpose and action to attack them. Make no mistake, Satan will be the evil mastermind behind the attack. He has long influenced worldly nations to oppose true worship. But Ezekiel's prophetic words about Gog of Magog focus on the world of the earthly nations that will attack Jehovah's people.
So what may we conclude about the identity of Gog of Magog? Let's have Sister Husino, please.
Yes, as we studied last week, for many decades, our publication said that it was a prophetic name for Satan. But now we have an adjustment in our understanding, and we know in first place that Gog of Magog is not a spiritual creature, and in second place, that it is a visible human enemy, a coalition of nations that will fight against pure worship, God's people found around the earth.
Very nice. Thank you for that. And let's have Sister Rodriguez, please.
Gog being a group of nations is in line with Matthew 24:9, where Jesus said that we would suffer tribulation by all the nations.
Yes, very good. That ties in nicely with our local needs there, doesn't it? To expect persecution. Further on this, Brother Torres, please.
Now we realize that Satan is still the one behind the scenes, but who is actually acting, we know it's these human governments.
Yes. Thank you for highlighting that too. And again, there's a footnote here. We know there's another expression, Gog and Magog. What's the point being made with this footnote? Sister Hoy, please.
We can see the similarities between Gog of Magog and Gog and Magog. Both end up being divisive. Actually, the coalition of nations stand in opposition to Jehovah and his people. And at the end of Christ's millennial reign, Gog and Magog will manifest the same traits as those rebels stand in opposition to Jehovah and his faithful worshipers.
And Brother Ham, thank you, Sister.
And the way Gog of Magog and Magog are destroyed, that's not the way Satan and spirit creatures would be destroyed. So it must refer to a human element who are opposed to Jehovah.
Yeah, good, thank you. Of course, not the same person we're talking about, not the same entity here, different, but same characteristics, right? And we'll get into that a little bit later in our book here down in a few weeks. But so far we've got a concrete identity of Gog of Magog. And don't we appreciate how the organization allows God's word to provide the answers, and comparing God's word with God's word, we come up with a nice concrete identity of Gog of Magog. Well, that leads us nicely into our next subheading, the land. What is it? Well, let's take a little tour of this land that Gog invades and see if we can identify this land. Let's read paragraph 11.
As we learned in paragraph 3, Gog of Magog will provoke Jehovah's great rage by invading a land that is precious to Jehovah. What land is this? Let us return to Ezekiel's prophecy. It says that Gog will invade the land whose people have been restored and regathered from the nations. Note, too, what it says about the restored worshipers who reside in this land. They dwell in security. Their settlements are unprotected by walls, bars, or gates, and they are accumulating wealth. This is the land in which Jehovah's pure worshipers earthwide reside. How can we identify it?
So how does Ezekiel's prophecy describe the land that Gog will invade? Before we give the answer, maybe we can have someone read Ezekiel chapter 38, verses 8 to 12. Can we have a reader for that? Let's have Brother Gutierrez, please.
It says, "You will be given attention after many days. In the final part of the years, you will invade the land whose people have been restored from the ravages of the sword, collected together out of many peoples onto the mountains of Israel, which had long been lying devastated. The inhabitants of this land were restored from the peoples, and all of them dwell in security. You will come against them like a storm, and you will cover the land like clouds, you and all your troops, and many peoples with you. This is what the sovereign Lord Jehovah says. In that day, thoughts will come into your heart, and you will devise an evil plan. You will say, I will invent the land of unprotected settlements. I will come against those living in security without disturbance, all of them living in settlements unprotected by walls, bars, or gates. It will be to take much spoil and plunder, to attack the devastated places that are now inhabited, and the people regathered from the nations, who are accumulating wealth and property, those who are living in the center of the earth."
Thank you, Brother Gutierrez. Appreciate that reading. So going back to that question, how does Ezekiel's prophecy describe the land that Gog will invade? Okay, let's have Brother Husino, please.
Yeah, he described about who these people are. For example, he said that I'm being restored and regarded from the nations, but also explain how will be this land. For example, they said that there will insecurity, settlements are unprotected by walls, bars, and gates, and they are accumulating wealth.
Yes, thank you. Very good. How about, let's have Sister Hanuman, please.
So it's interesting that this is not a physical location. And just like the brother mentioned, it's like it doesn't have walls, bars, or gates. But this is basically a security, it's a dwelling security, so a spiritual protection. So that is something that is really to take in lightly.
Thank you for that comment. Very nice. And it's good to mention that, because in that verse, it does say at the end, those who are living in the center of the earth. Kind of makes it sound like it's a specific location. What's the thought there, perhaps, when we think about this in comparison with the nation of Israel? You think about Israel, what was the nation of Israel considered by Jehovah? Sister Cloud, please.
They were his special people, precious to him. And those that are pure worshipers, those worshiping Jehovah, are precious to him. And they exist earth-wide, but he protects them all spiritually, no matter their location.
Thank you, Sister Cloud. And Brother Hammond, please.
And the nation of Israel was known as the center of pure worship. So would be appropriate that this is called the center of the earth.
Exactly. Thank you for highlighting that. Now let's focus a little bit more attention on the center of pure worship. And let's read paragraph 12.
It is helpful to consider the restoration that happened in ancient Israel, the land where God's chosen people lived, worked, and worshiped for centuries. When the Israelites proved unfaithful, Jehovah through Ezekiel foretold that their land would be devastated and left desolate. But Jehovah also prophesied that a repentant remnant would later return from exile in Babylon and restore pure worship in the land. With Jehovah's blessing, the land of Israel would be transformed, flourishing like the Garden of Eden. That restoration took place in 537 BCE, when Jewish exiles returned to Jerusalem to restore true worship in their beloved homeland.
Yes, very nice. Thank you. Question, what restoration happened in the land of Israel in Bible times? Let's have Brother Ackerland, please.
Well, initially the Israelites were unfaithful, and because of that they were conquered by Babylon and captured. But later the repentant remnant in 537 was able to return to Jerusalem, and there they were able to restore pure worship from that point.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good. Very nice. In fact, as the scripture mentions in Ezekiel 36, what did the nation of Israel become like? And why? Why was it described that way? What were the reasons for it to be described that way? Let's have Sister Hammond.
Well, Jehovah said, become like the Garden of Eden, but that was because of what he did. What he had left desolate, he was going to fix and make the land beautiful.
Very good. Yes. So we're seeing a couple aspects here, right? Brother Rodriguez, you have something to add to that?
Yes, so it made me think, restored like the Garden of Eden, this and then would be much more beautiful and greater than anything they ever had before. So it just shows us when Jehovah restores things, he doesn't just put them maybe how we would like it or how we would see things that would be good, but they're better than anything that we can imagine.
Yes, very good. Thank you. So it was like that, right? And so one, the Israelites had to do their part, right? See? And then two, this transformation, this blessing on Israel was a result of something that's very important that we need to see evidence of, and even in our organization, in our efforts to serve him. And what is it that we need to see each and every day to enjoy this spiritual paradise? Sister Ackerland.
Well, we really need to see Jehovah's blessing on it, because without that, nothing can flourish, nothing can grow. So that is the true key ingredient to this land being so well flourishing, just like the Garden of Eden.
Yes, very nice. Yes, faithfulness leads to Jehovah's blessings, and that's the keys, important keys to this condition that they enjoy. Well, let's bring it to our day. Let's go on to our paragraphs 13 and 14.
In modern times, God's pure worshipers experienced a similar restoration. As we learned in chapter 9 of this publication, by 1919, God's people were freed from the long captivity in Babylon the Great. In that year, Jehovah brought his restored worshipers into a spiritual land. That land is the spiritual paradise, the secure, spiritually prosperous environment or realm of activity in which we worship the true God. In this land, we dwell together in security with peace of mind and heart. We receive an abundance of spiritual food, and we have plenty of satisfying work to do in proclaiming God's kingdom. Indeed, we experience the truth of the proverb, "It is the blessing of Jehovah that makes one rich, and he adds no pain with it." No matter where we may live on this earth, we are in this land, the spiritual paradise, as long as we are actively supporting pure worship in word and in deed. This spiritual land is precious to Jehovah. Why? In his eyes, its inhabitants are the precious things of all the nations, individuals whom he has drawn to pure worship. They are earnestly endeavoring to put on a new personality, one that reflects God's own lofty qualities. As pure worshipers, they offer themselves fully in his service, doing so in ways that glorify him and prove their love for him. We can only imagine the joy that must fill Jehovah's heart as he sees his worshipers working hard to beautify the spiritual land. Just think, by giving pure worship priority in your life, you not only beautify the spiritual paradise, but also make Jehovah's heart rejoice.
Beautiful paragraphs, right? Let's ask that A question. What is this spiritual land? Let's have Brother Cloud, please.
The direct answer is that spiritual land is a spiritual paradise. It's this spiritually prosperous environment, this realm of activity in which we worship the true God and the way he should be worshiped.
Thank you. Nice. Very good. Let's have Sister Hammond, please.
It really struck me, verse 12 of chapter 38, that they want to take what we have from that land. But this is so precious, and what Jehovah has given us, there's no pain with it. there's no way they can take what we have. They just are going to want it.
Thank you for that nice thought. Brother Estrada.
I really appreciated the last sentence of paragraph 13 that talked about how no matter where we live on the earth, we're in this spiritual paradise as long as we're actively supporting pure worship. Because it's true, we are a worldwide brotherhood, so it doesn't matter where we are, we can enjoy the benefits of being in the spiritual paradise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that point. Very good. Very good. And let's have Sister Jusino.
Yeah, and the good thing is that we don't have to wait until the future to enjoy this spiritual paradise. We are enjoying it in this world. As Proverbs 1:33 say, if we listen to Jehovah, we dwell in security, and we are undisturbed by the threat of calamity.
Good. Thank you. And Brother Hammond.
And we think in our literature, we've had many articles of individuals like William Tyndall, who lived during this period of time prior to 1919, when this wasn't an established land, and the challenges that they had because there wasn't a channel for spiritual food. We never want to take this beautiful land for granted. It's something that we really cherish.
Very nice. Nice point. Appreciate you bringing that to our attention too. Well, let's look at our B question here. Why is this land precious to Jehovah? Let's have Brother Hanuman, please.
It's very heartwarming to know that it's those who are supporting this pure worship. And really, that's who Jehovah God is referring to here. That's who is precious in his eyes. It's the people. In John 6:44, it reminds us that Jehovah draws each individual to him. So he's very interested in each of these individuals who are actively supporting this pure worship. And that arrangement that he's given, really, it doesn't just end at our death, because the latter part of verse 44 says, and I will resurrect him. So even death doesn't end Jehovah's love for these ones who support his arrangement of pure worship.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And Sister Hoy, please.
And as Haggai chapter 2, verse 7 brings out, these ones have been shaken from the nations. And the reason why Jehovah's drawn us also was brought out in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, is because such ones have shown that they value what Jehovah is offering. They value the abundance of spiritual food. And once we've taken it in, we endeavor to imitate God by being loving and by doing our best to serve him, and to even change our dominant mental attitude so that we think and act more like Jehovah.
Thank you. And Brother Ackerland.
Going along with that thought of imitating Jehovah, he's our heavenly Father. So like any parent, to have their child grow up well and to imitate their good qualities and show them love and loyalty, that really is one of the best things we can do as children for him, as it mentions in Ephesians 5:1 and 2.
Thank you. Good, very good. Let's bring up that image there that we have for this paragraph. And now if we look at this, we know that it's depicting different situations here and involving the spiritual paradise. But we also realize too, it involves faithfulness on our part and also Jehovah's blessings. How do we see that in each of these pictures? Let's have Sister Hanneman, please.
It's amazing to see the smile on everyone's face, or others is showing expressions of their faith despite their circumstances. In the first picture, we can see the different backgrounds of friends together worshiping Jehovah, or working hard and beautifying his place of worship. Despite of being imprisoned, or poverty, you could see that their reliance is on Jehovah. And especially this last one with, being sickly in the hospital, and it's not the greatest circumstances, but look, they have this joy and then they're able to support each other. Nowhere in the world will you have this spiritual paradise in this current situation. So it's really comforting to see that despite where everyone is around the world, we have Jehovah's blessing.
Yes, good. Thank you. And Brother Rodriguez, please.
We see our dear brother there in prison. Maybe he's in isolation. He cannot preach to others because of his situation. It reminds us that Satan can take away maybe our freedom for a while, but he cannot keep us away from the spiritual paradise. Those dear brothers that were in prison in Eritrea for many, many years, every single one of those days, they were in this precious place because they are precious to Jehovah.
Yes, very nice. Very nice. And let's get to one final comment, Brother Jusino, please.
We can see in all these pictures that they are giving priority in their life to the pure worships. And they are enjoying of this beautiful spiritual paradise. But like mentioned in Proverbs 27:11, they are also rejoice Jehovah's heart.
Yes. So can you see the blessing in all these situations? Yeah, we definitely can. And what a beautiful, beautiful thing we have in the spiritual paradise in which we live. This is the land that we inhabit. We should cherish it, treasure it, just as Jehovah does too. And but we know it. We need to actively promote its peace, but it ultimately depends on Jehovah's blessings to exist. Well, next week we're going to consider the land. When, why, and how will Gog invade it? But we really appreciated your insightful comments that were encouraging and upbuilding. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much, Brother Hoy, for an excellent discussion, and thank everyone for your outstanding comments. It really brought to life the study, and how wonderful to bring home the practical application for us, the joy that we have in living in this spiritual land right now. So what can we say? Another excellent meeting. Let's take a few moments to review some of the highlights of what we learned tonight. In a world that worships pride, where we're encouraged to follow our heart, to do things our way, how wonderful to have a good example of Gideon to focus us on the benefits of humility. And as we consider the different aspects of the field ministry, we had several excellent examples. It really brought home to us how we can use visual aids effectively. Also, what makes a good conclusion to bring back that student or return visit. And as well, we also highlighted how we can make the practical value of the lesson stand out to our student. When we consider the local needs, again, we had some solid food that helps us prepare for the challenges that come ahead. And what can we say about Ezekiel's prophecy? How wonderful to see this exciting prophecy clearly explained before us. So today we focused on who this Gog of Magog is. We also focused on the where. What is that land? Where is this land located? And next week, we will get further clarity as we consider the when, the why, and the how. So we encourage all to be present next week so that we can continue discussing this exciting prophecy. But there's more to look forward to next week. We'll also be highlighting 2 examples, good spiritual men that we can imitate today. First, we'll consider one from Bible times, the example of Jephthah, what he experienced, how his good qualities shone through, and what we can learn and apply in our life. As well, we'll also consider an example from modern times, Brother Robert Johnson, who serves as a special pioneer in the US branch. And as we consider his example, there's many lessons, particularly for the younger ones. What can we learn from the way Brother Johnson set goals for himself, the training he received, and how he made himself available to serve Jehovah even when he was young? So for sure, there's a lot to look forward to in next week's meeting. So with that, we can conclude our meeting for tonight. So we encourage all to sing together song number 22, which is entitled "The Kingdom is in Place, Let It Come," and then Brother Joel Jusino will conclude with prayer.